Hello and welcome back to this video. In our previous video, we were able to work with parameters and arguments, and we were able to differentiate and use arguments and keyword arguments. Now in this video, we are going to be working with arbitrary arguments. So what are arbitrary arguments? So before I explain that, I'm going to write a simple print statement. But before that, I'm going to comment this code out. So I'm going to write a simple print statement, and I'm just going to write print, and then I'm going to pass in a lot of strings. So I'm going to pass in my name, my favorite programming language, and maybe my gender, so female. So now, and I'm going to save and run this. So you can see that Python was able to print all the various things that I passed in. So like you already know, this print is a function, just like the formatting function we created here, and the sum figure function that we created here. And these things that we pass into a print statement. So even this print statement here, this s.upper is an argument we are passing. All right. So all the x and y's that we passed into this print statement, they are arguments, right? So, but sometimes, or most of the time, you find out that you can print multiple things at the same time. But let me remove this now and go back to this our formatting function, right? So as you can see, I already have two arguments here. So I have the t and I have the x argument. Now let me pass in another argument here, and I'm going to, as you can see, Python is already specifying that I have two items that I can pass in. I have to pass in a value for s and a value for t. Now if I pass in l and I set it to maybe my name again, sorry, that's the most handy thing that I have here. So now I'm going to comment this out so that I won't have any conflicts. And yeah, I'm going to now pass in another argument that is not required here. All right. So, and this time around, I'm going to change it to positional, not even keyword. Okay. I'm going to change it to positional. So S is supposed to be a string. So I'm going to move this back to this place so that Python is going to see that as the value of S, right? So Python already knows that this is S and this is T, but we did not specify another argument for L, right? So I'm going to print this. And now we have an error. So Python is saying that we have an unexpected argument, right? And that is because we did not tell Python that we needed to pass in something else. So if I pass in L here, and then I come here, even if I don't print in, even if I don't do anything with L, Python is not going to complain, right? So I'm going to just run this, and this will work perfectly fine. But if I want to do something with L, I can now say, okay, I want to do something with L. So print L. So if we run this, now you have that printed for us. Now, this brings us to our next topic, arbitrary arguments, arbitrary keyword arguments, and arbitrary positional arguments. So now for now, I'm going to comment all of this out, and I'm going to explain the meaning of arbitrary keyword or positional arguments, right? So when you talk of an arbitrary argument, the word arbitrary means based on random choice, or when it comes to a function, you can talk about something that is not specified. You understand? So when you talk about an arbitrary argument, you're telling Python that you're going to give it random arguments, whether keyword or positional, that the arguments or the number of arguments you are going to pass in, that the number is not specified, that it could be 2, 3, or infinity, right? So you are just telling Python to get ready. I'm going to pass in a lot of arguments. I do not know how many yet, right? But if you do not specify that you're passing in a lot of arguments, Python is going to expect a certain number of arguments, whether keyword or positional. Now to demonstrate this, I'm going to create another function, and I'm going to call it to_upper. So now this function is going to convert items to capital letters, right? But I do not know how many items I am expecting. So I am going to tell Python that every item that you see, kindly convert all of them. As far as they are strings, please convert them to capital letter, right? So I am going to write a keyword now, arg. Now you do not have to use this, right? It's just a short form of argument. It's just for you. You can use k, you can use l, you can use item, anything you like. But the convention is arg, so I'm going to use it. But you don't have to. So like I've not been using it all the while, so it is not compulsory. But I just thought I should use it this time so that maybe when you're writing a proper program, you should use that, right? So now, and I'm going to pass it in with an with an asterisk, right? So this alone is already telling Python that the parameter is going to be that it should expect a lot of parameters, right? And if you see the parameter type that is here, it is telling us that Python is expecting a tuple, right? So, and for this, I'm just going to go straight to the point and I'm going to format all the items I'll be passing into this function. So I'm going to say format is equals arg, or better still, I'm going to write a for loop. So I'm going to say for item in arg, right? And I'm going to check if the item is a string. So if is instance, then I'll now pass in the item and then I'll pass in the string data type. So we know how we use this to check the different data types. When we treated data types, the different items that we created, whether they are of a certain data type, right? And I'm going to write my semicolon here. And I'm going to say that if that item is of string instance, please convert them to capital letter. So I'm going to say, maybe I'll say uppercase is equals item dot capitalize or dot upper. So I'm going to convert them to upper cases. So, and I will now print uppercase. So now we have a function that converts every single thing that is going to be passed into it into capital letters. So here, I'm going to come back here and I'm going to call the function. So I'm going to call to upper, and here I'm going to open and close my parentheses, and I'm going to pass in a lot of strings. So this time I'm going to pass in my name again. I'm going to pass in my favorite programming language. I'm going to pass in my gender, and probably I'm going to pass in my height, so 5.6, right? So now I'm going to save this and run. So you can see that all the arguments that were passed into this function, that they have all been converted to upper letter. So here I'm going to print the args. I'm going to print all of them here, right? So you can see that I'm no longer in the for loop. So I'm just going to, inside this function, print the arguments that I passed. So I'm going to just print args and I'll run this again. So now you see that here we have a tuple data type. So, or we can just say that we are printing the type of that item there, right? And then I'm going to clear this and save. So you can see that it's of class tuple, even though we just pass them in as different arguments. So this is one thing that you need to take note of. So if you want to access the individual members of the individual items that we are passed into this argument, you can access them by indexing them one after the other. So like we know that this is index 0 and this is index 1, index 2, and index 3. So I can decide to, what can we do with a float? Well, we can round it up to the higher or the lowest integer value, right? So, and if we want to do that, we have to like import the math module. So you can play around with that. And here we want to do, we want to tell Python that the last member of this, so we remember how we can use negative indexing. So we can say that, so we want to set a variable and call it convert, and we are going to set it to, well, we're going to ask it to be to a math.fill method, and we are going to pass in the arguments, so the last member of the argument. So remember, we are using indexing, so we are going to use negative index. So, and then we are going to print it. So now we are going to print convert. So now we are going to save this and run. Oh, okay. So we are going to call math.fill, please. So now we just called the math method. So now and we should get our output right. So this time around, it has rounded it up to the nearest high integer value. So I hope this makes sense, right? So this is how you can work with arbitrary arguments. So in our next video, we are going to be looking at how to work with arbitrary keyword arguments. So see you in the next video.